Industrial Revolution was at its peak. Hunter Albert had just returned from his travels and paid a visit to the royal family. The family gathered in the grand dining hall, a room of opulent elegance, with a long table surrounded by 16 chairs, lavishly set with a variety of dishes. Midway through the meal, Franklin, an old man in his mid-50s and the family patriarch, asked, "Albert, how was your vacation?" Swallowing a bite of fish, Albert replied, "Fantastic, and that woolen shawl looks great on you," he added, nodding toward Franklin. Franklin grinned. "It's thanks to you, Albert. This shawl was made from the fur of that legendary black wolf you hunted. No white or other markings, just pure black." He glanced proudly at his daughter, Edith, sitting across the table. She raised an eyebrow but remained silent, listening intently. Albert looked at her, his interest clear. He had long admired Edith and hoped to marry her, though she had shown no signs of sharing his feelings. "What do you think, Edith?" he asked. Edith placed her spoon down, her gaze steady. "Hunting animals for sport, money, or adventure is a crime, Albert," she said firmly. Albert rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, not this again." Edith's face grew taut. "The wolf you hunted is an endangered species, Albert. Do you realize how actions like that disrupt nature?" Franklin waved off her concern, a dismissive smile on his face. "Honey, humankind shapes nature, not the other way around." Albert chuckled. "And a wealthy man like your father, Edith, can do as he pleases." He raised his wine glass toward Franklin in a toast. Edith shook her head. "We can enjoy our lives, but we have no right to destroy others, even animals. They, too, have families and a place in the world. Forests, plants, trees, they make life possible on Earth." Turning to her father, she continued, "I want you to reconsider your plans for the paper company. You can't just clear-cut forests." Franklin's expression hardened. "That project is worth billions, Edith. I can't just pull out." "But think about the consequences," Edith urged. "We could plant more trees, buy land to reforest, and only harvest what we need. That way, we'd work with nature, not against it." Albert scoffed. "That would take years." Franklin sighed. "Sorry, my dear, we don't have that kind of time." Defeated, Edith rose and left the table, her words hanging in the air as the men continued their meal. Later, as dusk settled, Franklin sat in the mansion's lush garden, watching the fading light. Albert joined him, taking a seat nearby. Franklin turned to him. "You're the right man for my daughter, Albert." Albert's face lit up. "I'd be honored to marry Edith, but I'm not sure she'll accept." "Leave that to me," Franklin replied with a slight smile. "Do you know why I think you're perfect for her? You're bold, driven, strong. And, like me, you have a hunger for wealth and success. I need someone by my side who won't waste time worrying about animals or forests." Albert grinned. "Thank you. I promise to give Edith whatever she desires." Franklin nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, about the village of Maine. Are they cooperating?" Albert's expression soured. "Not yet. They refuse to leave their homes." "Then make them," Franklin said coldly. "I'll handle the paperwork." Albert stood, preparing to leave. "Consider it done." From the balcony above, Edith watched their exchange, her hands clenched in frustration. Her maid, Lila, approached, carrying a tray with tea. "You seem troubled, my lady," Lila observed. Edith sighed, taking the cup. "My father wants me to marry Albert because he's just like him. Greedy, selfish, with no respect for nature. He thinks Albert is the ideal match for me." Lila offered a sympathetic smile. "But you have your father's love, and he believes he's choosing well." Edith shook her head. "I won't marry Albert. One day, I'll find someone who shares my love for nature and the life around us." Night had fallen when Albert was ready to leave for Maine. "I'll return soon," he told Franklin. "I'll make sure the villagers know their place." "Remember what I said," Franklin replied, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. Upstairs, Edith listened from her doorway, catching fragments of their conversation before Albert departed. Later, As she prepared for bed, brushing her hair before the mirror, a soft knock sounded. Franklin entered, his face softened by a rare tenderness. "What is my little princess doing?" he asked. Edith set down her brush. "Just getting ready for bed. You're so much like your mother, brushing your hair like that," he said, a hint of melancholy in his voice. Edith looked down. "I miss her, father." Franklin's expression hardened again. "It was nature that took her from us." Edith's voice was gentle but firm. "Death is part of life, father. Nature isn't cruel. It keeps balance." Franklin sighed heavily. "Enough of your ideals. I want you to marry Albert." Edith's jaw clenched. "No, I don't love him." "He's the best for you, and I've given him my word," Franklin replied sharply. "Without even asking me?" she asked, her voice rising. "You promised him my hand?" "You're my daughter," he retorted. "You'll do as I say." He left, leaving Edith standing alone, feeling the weight of his decision. In Franklin's study, he poured himself a glass of wine. William, the loyal family servant, entered, dressed in the formal attire of the period. Franklin looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, William," he began, swirling the wine in his glass, "Albert's father is a successful businessman. Their industries have been a driving force in the industrialization we see today. A marriage between Edith and Albert would expand my empire even further." William nodded. "Yes, my lord, I understand." Franklin leaned closer. "I want you to help convince her, William. She respects you. You'll find the right words." William's face was impassive, but his heart ached for Edith. "Yes, my lord," he replied, bowing as he left the room.